Yes, thank you all. Sorry for the small glitch. Yes, welcome to today's session. Today we're talking about parenting and children wellness session. My name is Doreen Muhulia and I will be your moderator for today's session. I have a co-moderator, Helen Babazi. I'd like to introduce her to you. Helen, please say hi. Unfortunately, you're muted, Helen.
Thank you so much, Doreen, for that good introduction. Welcome on board for all our viewers today. We look forward to a great session and great learning and insights about what is happening. Thank you. Look forward to the.
Okay, thank you so much, Helen. Helen and myself are from Minet. We are bringing you this session today. And you're wondering why we're talking about, parenting and teenage mental wellness. We have a number of experts on the call today who I'll be introducing very shortly. But just to give you a background of the topic that we are discussing today, would like to basically draw our attention, especially after the recent consecutive reports in the media outlets talking about, mental health concerns among children, school-going children. We want to understand the mental health, issues that they are struggling with. What are the warnings? What are the risk triggers? And what, as parents and guardians, we can do. If you've watched TV or if you've read some newspapers, there's been reports about adolescents and the things that they're dealing with, children disappearing from home, children self-harming, a number of things. They're dealing with identity issues, and we thought it would be nice to speak into that topic. It's such a timely time, considering that our children are in a break now. They are home and we are approaching the festive season where we'll have enough time with them. And I thought it would be a good time to speak to us. Just to let you know, this session is three-session webinar. We'll have the webinar today. We'll have again a session tomorrow, and we'll have a session on Friday. So today's session is mainly talking to the parents and the guardians who would like to create awareness about the psychosocial situation around children. And for tomorrow and Friday's session, we would like to urge you to talk to the youth and the children and adolescents to log in and listen, because we want to speak to them. And we knew that we would not be able to get through to them unless we go through the guardian and the parents. So today we'll speak to the parents and the guardians, and we are hoping that tomorrow and Friday, you can prompt the children to log in. It would be good for you to log in with them, but if they are not comfortable with you logging in with them, it's okay. They can log in, they'll be speaking to psychologists and talk to them about, identity and their purpose. So allow me today to introduce to you the team that we have today. We have 4 panelists, and the first one is Dr. Kenneth Kalani Okware. Then we have Mr. Barnabas Samuel, Pastor Sam, also known as Pastor Sam. We have Dr. Vivian Olgah Kudda, and then we have Ms. Cecilia Okoth. So we'll be posing a number of questions to them, but I'd like to take a few minutes just to introduce you, to tell you who exactly they are, and to help you understand that they're the best people to discuss this topic. Dr. Kenneth is a mental health expert. He's a graduate of Makerere University, and he's currently a senior medical officer at the Ministry of Health. He has a number of experience in healthcare provision, in a national referral hospital, and he also has a number of years experience, at national level, developing training material, guidelines, policies, and strategic plans. He also trains students and healthcare professionals. He also coordinates a number of programs, and he also does mentorship. Dr. Kenneth Kalani, please greet the attendees.
Hello, everyone, hello everyone, and good afternoon.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, please.
Yeah, as introduced, thanks for the warm introductions. I'm called Dr. Kenneth Kalani. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ken. Our next panelist is called Barnabas Samuel. He's also known as Pastor Sam. He's a parent, he's a teacher, he's a teenage parent, and also a spiritual leader. Barnabas is an intentional father of 4 biological disciples, as he calls them. He has 2 lovely girls and 2 wonderful boys. He's a graduate of Makerere University and also of Greenwich University in London, UK. He's a culture and tourism consultant. He's also a recipient of the Vine Family Impact Awards. He's an author of a number of transformational books. He's a certified transformational life coach from the Transformation Academy of USA. He's also co-founded a number of programs. You've heard of programs like Boys to Men Boot Camp, Mothers Raising Sons program, Man of Valor program, Stand of V program, Parenting Teens. He's also co-founded a program called Intentional Dad Program. Barnabas is also a pastor at Mavuno Church in Kampala, and he's also founder of Chokma International Christian School. Barnabas would like to welcome you. Please say hello to us.
Thank you so much for the introductions. I'm so honored to be here, and I really look forward to the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Barnabas. Our third panelist is called Dr. Vivian Olgah Kudda. Vivian is a children clinical psychologist. She works with children and families. She has experience of a number of years, ranging from clinical, school, private practice, NGOs, and humanitarian settings. And she provides also workplace mental health services. She's currently working at a psychology practice. It's situated at the Surgery Hospital in Naguru and also at the Minders Wellness and Psychological Center in Kamocha. Vivian also consults for different entities in and beyond Kampala. Her belief is that having the awareness to identity and therefore prevention or respond to risks that endanger the psychological well-being of children and adolescents is critical in producing a resilient generation that is productive and one that can solve problems as they arise. Vivian lives in Kampala with her daughter Asante and Snowy, their friend, and her niche is in trauma therapy. Vivian, you're welcome today. Please say hello to us.
Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be here. I look forward to the deliberations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Vivian. And our last but not least panelist is called Cecilia. Cecilia is a journalist who is focused on mental health. You've seen a number of reports, like I've said, in the media outlets. Cecilia is currently working with the New Vision Uganda. She's a multimedia investigative journalist. She has covered stories on health, on education, human rights, and crime for the past 12 years at the New Vision. She's a graduate of mass communication from Uganda Christian University, and she's currently also pursuing a Master's of Arts degree in Strategic and Corporate Communication at Makerere University. In 2018, Cecilia won the Editorial Innovations Award, for her investigative piece titled Cancer Patients Bribe for Attention. In 2019, she also covered an investigative story titled Karamojong Girls Sold to Al-Shabaab. She also emerged as one of the best, among the best employees in 2019 in the New Vision. She has also co-authored and other investigative, pieces here and there. Cecilia, you're welcome. Please say hello to us.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for the warm introduction. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I think I have introduced all our four panelists, and I'd like us to get into the topic. You wonder what the objective of this webinar is today. We have just really straight objective. We want to create awareness, for parents on the psychosocial issues affecting children, and for us as parents and guardians to take responsibility, and also to create awareness for mental ill health among children. We also want to share quick wins and avenues for children accessing counseling support, and also to be able to partner with parents in the call for parenting to raise a solid generation. So Minet has partnered with the specialists here to be able to bring you that. And like I said earlier, I'd like to remind you, the session runs today, tomorrow, and Friday. Today's session, we are speaking mainly to parents and to guardians. And we hope that tomorrow you'll encourage our children to log in, because we will be speaking directly to them. Thank you very much, and would like to get into the session. Would like to start with some statistics to inform us of what is happening. And I'd like to invite Dr. Okware to speak to us about the statistics in the country and the burden of mental illness among the youth. And then later, we'll pose a number of questions to our different panelists. Thank you. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you so much, moderator, for posing that question and picking interest in the topic of mental health, particularly amongst the young people. Mental health, mental mental illness, when I'm asked to talk about this, I always want to start by defining what mental health is and what mental illness is, before we can go straight into the burden. So mental health is basically defined as a state of well-being in which an individual is able to take care of themselves, cope with the day-to-day stresses of life, make meaningful relationships, work productively and fruitfully, and make a contribution to his or her society. Basing on that definition, you realize that we need mental health on a day-to-day basis in order for us to do our work. For children, you can tailor it down to the ability to make relationships, the ability to perform in school, the ability to do house chores and learn, and so on and so forth. And that is how mental health is coined. So that said, everybody has mental health. And I always hear the phrase that we are all mentally ill, but the degree varies. That's wrong. We are all mentally healthy, but at varying degrees. So when we get things that stress us, and I think we are going to discuss a lot about that. When we get things that stress us, they check our mental health, and sometimes we move away from being perfectly mentally healthy towards mental illnesses or mental health issues, I would like to put it. So if you have mental health issues because of stress that have been prolonged for a long time, you can get mental illness. And mental illness are basically changes in our thinking, our behavior, and in our actions, that moves away from what you would call as normal, and that can be clustered as mental illness. So one of the take homes today from people here, parents who are listening to us, that everybody has mental health. And most of what we are going to discuss today are the strategies to protect our mental health. There must be a deliberate effort to protect our mental health because the stresses are vast, as we are going to discuss later. That said, you asked me about the burden of mental health, actually about the burden of mental health issues, particularly amongst the youth. Globally, they say 13% of the youth suffer some form of mental illness. And that's even worse for a country like Uganda, where 75% of the population is young. But coming down to the statistics here, we've not done a proper survey as a country to come to the statistics of what kind of mental health issues affect our young people. But out of the studies that have been done by different researchers, things like alcohol use and misuse are really high. And some researchers estimate, someone did a study in a university, and they found that up to 8.9% of university students were engaging in heavy episodic drinking, and the word heavy is defined there, which is not good. Some other person did a research in amongst high school students around Mukono area, and found that up to 16% of high school girls had symptoms of severe depression. And Professor Catherine Abo also did a research in Eastern Uganda and found that up to 26.6% of children and adolescents had anxiety disorders. These are very high figures, and from what I explained there, you will note that the commonest mental health issues amongst young people and even adults is anxiety, depression, and alcohol and substance use problems. And this is perpetuated, and the thing is that these mental illnesses or mental health issues are interconnected. That said, about the statistics, I want us to know that the burden of mental health issues or mental illness does not affect the young person alone, but it goes beyond that person to affect the family and to affect the country as well, as we shall see. So in a nutshell, mental health issues are rising. Mental health problems and mental illnesses are on the rise, particularly in the young people, and they are common. And it's not something that is strange. It's something that all of us can suffer from. And common mental illnesses such as anxiety and depression are illnesses that you and I suffer, not anyone else in a different state. So thank you. Over to you, moderator.
Thank you so much, Doctor. You talked about a number of things like anxiety and depression. Are those the drivers? Are those the drivers? I'd want to know, are those the drivers for mental health among the youth?
Talking about the drivers for mental health, so anxiety and depression are actually forms of mental illnesses or mental health problems that come up. But there are things that lead to anxiety, depression, alcohol, and substance use, particularly amongst the youth. There are very many drivers that have been pointed out, but I'll just state a few for the purpose of this webinar. You know that poverty cannot be separated with mental illness and mental health issues. You know the state of our country now. There's a lot of high unemployment rate, low income, poor housing, things like struggle to get food, and even low education status in the depth. So all these things lead to mental illnesses in a way, because if young person is struggling and they cannot get food, they struggle, the parents also struggle, they cannot get money. So that means they cannot provide. That stress moves to the child as well, and that can lead to mental illnesses. We have issues like marital discord. It's on the rise. Single parenthood is on the rise, and sometimes parents do not know what exactly to do or how to raise parents singly, because we are in a transition of sorts. We were raised differently, you and I, and because of the urbanization and globalization, there are very many things that are coming into change, and it is difficult to find a model and that is even complicated by the fact that we have to work twice as hard to fend for ourselves, to fend for the family. So we find that most of the times parents are struggling to look for money and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, the children are not attended to, and that love missing for a child, that once a child feels unloved, that can be a driver for mental health issues. But that said, there are also a lot of family issues and marital consequences, all complicated by very many aspects. So all those things affect the young people. And at the end of the day, it can lead to mental health issues. There's a lot of sexual violence issues coming up. There was a study recently done, and they found that up to 70% of young people suffer some form of sexual violence, which is quite high, and it's even compounded by the fact that sometimes parents are not exactly, we are so busy and soaked up in looking for money and looking for trying to support the family in terms of financial and material gains, but we forget the physical care of the children. So sometimes our children are abused, including the boys. And this is something that is left. So once someone suffers sexual violence, be it at home, be it at school or anywhere else, that trauma can lead to mental illnesses. There are things like high academic demands. Sometimes I always tell people this, that we have reduced education to academic excellence. And so we expect so much, and education is not exactly individualized. Every child has different abilities, but sometimes the expectation, even from the parents, even from the schools and from the society, is so much. And these young people struggle so hard to meet these academic expectations. And in so doing, they get burnt out, and they get stressed. Some of them may not have the capability to attain the academic excellence that is needed of them. And because of that, they may feel like they are not worth it. They get stressed and ultimately can develop some form of mental health problems. HIV is also coming up. HIV is an issue, and the recent report we've noted that it's even increasing amongst the young people. HIV in itself can cause some form of mental illness, let alone the stigma, let alone the medicines people have to take every day. But the virus itself can also lead to mental illness. So that is also a driver of mental health issues and mental illnesses amongst the young people. Finally, I want to talk about the impact of urbanization and globalization, so to say. So, I mean, there are things that are changing. We've seen a lot of urban poor coming in. We've seen a lot of rural-urban migration and so on and so forth. So all these things come with consequences. My village now is more like a town. I almost have no village because of the globalization. So land is not there. People are maybe housing is difficult to get. And all these things expose young people to mental health issues. The issues of culture, what we used to believe in those days is not what is here. And parents are confused, the young people are confused. At the end of the day, this causes conflicts in their minds and, it predisposes them to mental health issues. So in conclusion, there are very many things that can drive, that drive mental health issues or mental health problems among the young people. But those are some of the ones that, I could point out in this talk. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Kenneth. You've reminded me, you said something about too busy. And I remembered what somebody said, that we are too busy investing for our children, but not investing, in our children. And the statistics, are so worrying. You talked about poverty as being one of the drivers. And when I look at the current economy, I don't know what that means, but considering that you have had the privilege of looking at some of these policies on the national level, I will come back to you to ask about the government response. But now I'd like to ask Vivian. I know Vivian has firsthand experience dealing with parents and children or teenagers sometimes in the counseling setting. So Vivian, I'd like to ask you, what is your experience with clients in a consulting room? When they come there, what have you seen? Vivian, can you hear me? Vivian, would like to tap into your experience in the counseling room, seeing these children and their parents and guardians.
Oh, thank you, Doreen. You kept cutting out, but I finally got you. And thank you, Dr. Kalani, for being very exhaustive. So after the onset of COVID, or just during the start of COVID, is when we started to see more numbers. In the past years, it used to be parents calling in and saying, oh, I have a 13-year-old, could you please see them? But then things have started to change with the 16-year-old going into the internet and looking for service providers and calling in and saying, I don't feel I am fine, I worry a lot, I'm so stressed. Many of them actually come in when they've already made their own diagnosis of I am depressed, I am anxious, whatever it is. But we are seeing a growing number of children seeking for the services themselves. For others who can approach their parents, they ask for the service. There are schools that have counselors. We've also seen an increased number of referrals from such schools. The most common conditions that the children present with, and this will not be far from Dr. Kalani's submission, is depression, characterized by sadness, withdrawal, less motivation and poor concentration. And then we have anxiety. Anxiety is characterized by worry. What may happen, usually what might go wrong. And then obviously, and perhaps Cecilia will let us know, there's an increasing number of children, and I've seen this in the papers quite a lot, an increasing number of children that are using drugs. Usually it's alcohol and marijuana. Marijuana in various forms, some it's for the cookies that are laced with marijuana, some smoke it, whatever form, but we are seeing an increased number of children present with those three. When children present, when children come for therapy, we see, especially for substance abuse, we see that as a symptom of something. So also to tell the parents that are here that often than not, the child's behavior is a symptom of something. So parents come and say, it's the alcohol bit, but to me, that's a symptom. So during therapy, and that's why we involve parents in therapy, is for us to explore what pushed this child to use whatever they're using. For some children who are emotionally abused, many of them are looking for love and comfort. So you find some of them have engaged in premarital sex, so to call it. And a parent will say, we're a Christian family, I'm so disappointed in this child. But talking to the child will tell you, I am looking for someone to tell me, someone to affirm that I am present, that I matter, that I am available, that I'm a human being. So that is really what is going on in therapy. But again, to mention that the number of parents that we are seeing has also gone up. And more interesting is that for the parents that we see, after more about mental health, I've seen a number of parents who say, could you please check in with my children and see if all is well? So we're also seeing an increased number of parents taking consideration in the mental health of their children, but also looking at it from a wellness point of view, not necessarily that the children have significant challenges, but because the parent at some point realized that, oh, if I've been feeling like this, how about my children? So kudos to that. And lastly, Doreen, emotional abuse is on the rise, but oftentimes we pay attention to physical abuse. So the name calling, the body shaming, that and more is on the rise, especially because children in the current era blossom or bloom quite fast. You see a 13-year-old she has the big bust, so to call it, and then other people look at her as an older girl and the sort. Perhaps to add, we are also seeing a number of children in the line of emotional abuse, children who are parentified. So because some parents are present, but then absent for various reasons, we appreciate that parents have to look for money within and out of Uganda or Kampala. So somehow, one of the children has to take care of their siblings, and as such, their emotional needs are neglected. Those children mature so fast, and in the end, they realize that they are burnt out. They are giving more than they receive. Their brains are not developed to be able to take care of other people's needs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vivian. Like we have all heard, Vivian has talked about prevention. Definitely there's intervention, but what Vivian says is that you don't have to wait for somebody to struggle with something. She said a number of parents are calling and saying, you know what, check on with my child if all is well. And we can all agree that our parenting has been tested. Just to remind us, this is supposed to be an interactive session. Our Q&A is open. The questions that we are posing to our participants are questions that we received from you. When you received the flyer, a few people sent in the questions, and that is what we are discussing. But we will have time later to look at the questions that are coming in. So please share with us your questions and we will relay them. We recognize a number of people who are here who are under the Minet Employee Assistance Program, and they're already receiving some intervention from the program. But if you're here and maybe it's your first time to hear about Minet, or you don't know where to start, please, there are contacts on the flyer. You can reach out to us, send us a message, and we'll be able to support. Speaking from what Vivian has said, she talked so much about parenting and the call for us as parents. I'd like to go straight to Pastor Sam, Uncle Sam. We can agree that parenting has changed. The call on us is bigger. And I know that you have invested so much time in being an intentional parent, the way you describe yourself. You have experience in parenting. And I want to pick your thoughts on how we as parents can deal with the changing dynamics of parenthood. Vivian talked about bullying. She talked about, high levels of exposure. She talked about single parenthood, a number of things. So as parents, how can we deal with the changing dynamics of parenthood?
Well, thank you so much, Doreen, for that introduction. I'm trying to see if I can share my screen. Does it come?
I see that it's loading. Yes.
Okay.
Kindly put it in presentation mode so that we can get the best out of it.
Something has just come up on my screen.
We're seeing parenting and teens' mental wellness.
Okay, where is the presentation mode?
Just to your right, should be to your right. Is
next to the negative sign. Next to where you just the screen.
Okay. Maybe I don't know.
you can let's redeem time. You can proceed. We'll be able to follow along. We can see the screen.
Okay. All right. Well, I just want to say that it's been just to answer your question, it's been a very interesting space for me, even just as a parent and also as a teacher, just seeing how students engage and get involved in this. But there's a dynamic to this, and I just want to bring it to our attention that we are dealing with millennials. Most of us are born in the 80s, so we're dealing with the teenagers today, born into this generation whereby some of us are really struggling, and we are not rubbing. I mean, they're rubbing off badly with us as parents, and we have to understand that there is the ideal family, and also there are some dysfunctional families, just as Doctor mentioned earlier. So these are some of the things that also somehow trickle down to the children or to the teenagers. And the why is that indeed we're dealing with millennials, and we just have to have a mind shift in this, because they are not understanding our old school ways of parenting. And some parents who have tried to bend their rules, some of us as parents, we condemn them and say, look, your child can't be doing that, and you're just looking at them. And this old school of looking at a child like an African mom or father with just one look, it doesn't work anymore. The children are ask questions. When we're growing up, mommy could look at you and you know that this is what she means. In today's generation, they ask daddy why, mommy why. So parents are really grappling with this, and it's such a huge challenge, especially with coupled with a number of things that come up with. I don't know if the slide has sloped down for the second one, number 2, but I wanted to. Okay, I wanted to say that also. Yeah. The second point is that we're also looking at the post-COVID effects, because if we look at the last 2 years, I mean, the 2 years when the lockdown happened, some students who didn't go to school lost 2 years. And of course, this has affected them so badly. Imagine a boy or girl who was 14, right now they're 16, and they're looking at maybe a gap of 2 years, and they're in a class whereby so many things are happening in their bodies. Of course, their hormones happening, they had a deep voice and all the things, and they are grappling with this as well. And parents at a place of not understanding. So the post-COVID effect has also come in so much. And we, of course, also remember these kids were at home and they saw mommy and daddy fighting. Personally, myself, people may say pastors don't have challenges, but even us, just being in my wife's space all the time for the 2 years during lockdown was quite something, because you've been used to a rhythm of leaving home and coming back late and not in each other's space. So children saw all those things, and some of these things have affected them mentally. And yeah, and we see also, of course, the economy, the hard times of the economy, which we're calling the curse of economy. Parents are out there in the rat race. As parents, we have found ourselves not having time, if I can speak on behalf of the parents. And we have found, parents have found themselves in having 80% of the time in the marketplace and only 20% of the time at home. And so these are some of the challenges which parents are really facing, because they're hard times. Now it makes it matters worse for a parent who's a single parent. Because imagine a parent who's single and they have 3 or 4 teenagers in the house. They have to make ends meet, because teenagers can eat even a loaf of bread for just in just a few. So parents are in that space, and the common word there right now, because maybe our excellency told us to eat cassava, is they're calling it the cassava economy. They're hard times and parents are struggling. The other thing is also technology versus the 80s parenting. That teenagers are so caught up with the technology, and as parents, we're really grappling with that. How can we cope with this? Because one thing for sure, it's affecting the teenagers. On my desk, I have so many teenagers caught up in this cyberbullying. I think the previous speaker made mention about it, how children are developing so easily, quickly, because I think of the kind of food they're eating. I'll be making mention of that later. But also, these are some of the things that are affecting us as parents. We don't know how to do it. In our times, it was different. And it is also said that parenting, you can only give what you have, how much you're taught. And many times we parent from our past. And this is really affecting the teenagers, because we need to just have a mind shift from how we parented to how we are parenting today. And poverty has left many parents, especially in the rural areas, succumb to all sorts of abuse, early marriages to their children, accept the status quo, and many others. So so you'll also notice that parents or guardians or caregivers have adopted a common trend, which is that both the parents are working to bring financial stability, especially in times like this. So these are some of the things that are really affecting the teenagers, because this calls for a gap for them to be to have freelance to do whatever they have to do. And many parents have adopted into systems of saying, look, I'll buy data and let them do whatever they have to do to disrupt them. Other parents, because of the rat race, they are picking their children late from school and those kinds of things. So these are some of the things that are affecting the styles of parenting. They're affecting the teenagers big time. So parents' challenges in these hard times are quite a number, but I'd like to just go to the place of how can parents deal with the changing dynamics of parenthood. It's quite interesting that some of the things have affected us deeply, both on both sides, the parents and the teenagers, because lack of time is one of those things which is so affecting the teenagers. And the fact that there's no bonding and having no time because of the hard time, because of the rat race. A parent is running after money to, I think Doreen put it so well. We are looking out to invest into our children, but yet we're not investing because there is no time. The money we're running after can go, but the relationship is the reason some teenagers, they look out for others to help them, but not for their parents because there's no bonding. And in that case, I'm not surprised that they'll be calling support from elsewhere. Like the previous speaker said, that parents are asking, can you find out from my child? But because they don't have time, then failure to teach children the fundamental moral values. This is also something that is really affecting us. Those spaces when, as parents, when we had a dining table and have that time to ask questions and look at the children, how they're eating, how they are, it's not, there are very few parents. I've not done a statistics or research on this, but I know that very many friends I've visited, they don't have the dining table culture anymore. So these are some of the things that have been kicked out through the window, and they're affecting they're leaving the gap, and this is affecting the teenagers because there's no time even to just teach the moral values or what does a family stand out for. So these are some of the things that are affecting the teenagers. Then imbalanced life, like I mentioned earlier, parents are having 80% in the marketplace because of the rat race, and this is really affecting the teenagers. And parents are really grappling with this. How can they balance? How can they do this? And to make matters worse, the government structure where we don't even have career guidance, where a child can really identify when they should maybe specialize. These are some of the things that it still goes back to the structure. Hence, the parents are always on their toes to be able to perform well in aspect of life. Lack of trust and misunderstanding between the teenagers and parents. This is so real. Okay, there's some noise in the background. As parents, we at work, usually there is lack of excellent, strong bonding, and this has caused also the teenagers don't have the trust. The emotional bonding is not there, and because of this, it has faded away with time because of not being there. Also, nutrition deficiency. Friends, I have to bring this to your attention that indeed, the children today, teenagers today, if you give them greens, they'll tell you, yuck, it's not good. You give them what could be nutrients that maybe we've made food at home and they should be having. They say we don't want that. They would want fast foods. And this is so typical of teenagers today. And parents are really also grappling with this. How can they bring back that culture? For us, our culture was, I mean, most cultures is Sunday, especially Sunday evening, go home and have this dinner and around the table, maybe traditional meals like matoke and others. It's not happening in many. So we have seen many teenagers ending up with mental issues as well, just because of what they eat. I don't want to eat any other food. I want just KFC. You give them milk. I don't want milk. I just want KFC. I want ice cream and all the things. So the nutritional deficiency is one of the things that's really affecting our teenagers. Many of them are going by the models. They want to remain small. What they're seeing, Hollywood is telling them a lot. And so nutrition is something that they take in very early, even as little as 14. My daughter started it at 13 years. We had to have real conversations about this. So it's real. Excessive use of gadgets is a big one. And parents are really grappling with this as well. There's, like I said earlier, cyberbullying, high level exposure to so many things. Everything is just a click away. Pornography, children are watching pornography. And of course, it disorganizes their morals and also quite a number of things, which takes us back to mental health and their wellness. So in times where we used to push tires and also make wire cars, today or Kwepena, as we used to play, nowadays kids are completely glued on screens and many apps. Parents are even buying data to just make sure they distract them to buy off their time away. It's also aggressive behavior. Teenagers today are very aggressive, especially even to parents and authority. And it takes you back to a place of us parenting. And I just want to believe that even as parents who are on here, is that we must have a paradigm shift, a mind shift from how we were and what we are today, because many parents have stuck to their iron fist way of parenting. And yet we are parenting a different generation, not a generation where we grew up. And so I always tell parents at the camps where they bring the boys and we have 1 week with them, like we're having next week in this, next December, the next month, December. We just have to talk with them and not at them, because the more you talk at them, the teenagers become aggressive, and parents are really grappling with this, and they're like, I don't understand. So teenagers are becoming aggressive. Why? Because in overall, as parents, we have become more impatient and less tolerant as a society because of the stress at work, because of the challenges we have, the fights we have, the arguments at home, and even the children pick up all these things. So the aggressiveness of teenagers has become real. Then also there's a judgmental attitude. Today as a teenager is expected to be perfect in all ways, to get accepted by his or her peers in school. So parents have also jumped onto this. And of course, the parents have also tried to see, how can my child be to this status? So parents have put a lot of effort to make their teens come up with expected benchmarks, only to help them to be accepted because of the social abilities that or settings that they have set up. Then also there's too much study pressure. Teenagers are under a lot of pressure to study. In our times, we used to have, if you had an A student, everybody praised them in the community. And it takes us back to again our academic structure. And so teenagers, some of those who are not in A-class students, who can do other things. I remember growing up, we had a boy who knew, growing up, I think you'll understand my age now. We used to watch the Bundesliga. There was no Premier League at that time. It wasn't so popular. And we had a boy in class who knew everything about football, the footballers' names, the homes where the football club homes, and the referees. He knew everybody. But when it came to class, he was always flanking, was always the last. But he was so brilliant when it came to football. No one could tell the names of the players, and German names are quite difficult to pronounce, but he knew all these things. But we all knew him as stupid in class, but yet maybe he just needed a career guidance on how he could be a commentator, a football commentator, and he would have, maybe could have been the best football commentator in Uganda that Uganda has ever produced. So there's too much study pressure on children. Christine and I, my wife, we've been homeschooling. We chose to homeschool our children, and it has taken a lot of pressure from that, but also because I was doing some missionary work. So that is also something that is really affecting teenagers. Today, even as young as 10 years, kids go to school, they spend 10 hours. That's more than you and me who go maybe for 8 to 5 o'clock. At 6 or 5:30, a child is leaving home to go to study. So that's too much pressure as well, affecting the children. And if you look at the developed countries, some of them just use very few hours and very effectively. So that is also affecting our teenagers mentally, and parents as well, because parents have to wake up early and spend the whole day in office. Some of them are dozing on the desks. So this is all mental illness, and it's affecting. Also, then the lastly is protecting teenagers against child abuse. Parents are really struggling in this area. Many children, as I walk even with some parents, I know some could have logged on here, but some of them are so involved. The teenagers are involved in so many things because they've been exposed. Some of them have come and said, Mommy and Daddy, I'm a homosexual. This is what I believe. And parents are struggling with all these things. And teenagers need to be so much, they've been exposed to too much. And so the parents are really struggling to just even protect them. In our culture, we don't do this in our, so parents are also struggling with child abuse out there, sleepovers, parties, all the things are affecting the children in that regard. So in my submission, I strongly believe that as parents, we're grappling with so much because of the changing dynamics of parenthood, but we must have a mind shift. And this mind shift calls for us as parents to call on a community, to have a community, because we can't do it alone. If we choose to say, I want to, for me and my children, we shall have to do this, I have to tell you that there's some other parents out there who are going through exactly the same thing that you're going through. So we encourage parents to have a community to do life together, especially if you have children of the same age as teenagers. Call on other parents who have the same age children and work with them. We actually have programs that we run through, and I encourage parents to do life with their children. I mean, with their children and also themselves, so that they can harness this monster or the elephant in the room of parenting teenagers, because it's not a walk in the park. It's so daunting to so many parents that they find it so hard to accept that indeed. There's one parent we met and said, I don't remember having all these banging of doors and shouting when I was growing up. But it's because also the parents are so stressed, and they're in a rat race, and they can't understand it. So I think we need to have a place of a mind shift, a culture shift from what we parented and to the teenagers we have today, so that we understand them and also embrace them. And also especially for the men who are here, fathers, it's a place of being intentional and not a passive parent. Because if you become a passive parent, then you're breeding these things under your nose that you realize, how did I raise my children like this? I think in scripture we know of a man called Eli. He was a priest. He allowed his children as teenagers to do abominable things around church, and later God just destroyed them. So I think for me, my submission is that as parents, we need to be at a place of harnessing what the changes today with the teenagers, and also be able to work with other parents and exchange ideas on how we can do this. Christine and I have done this. We're working with so many parents with teenagers, and it's been amazing on how we can compare notes on how parent our children better. So that's my submission, Doreen, for now.
Thank you so much, Pastor Sam. Such an elaborate submission. Thank you so much. I would not be able to go through what he has said, but he's talked about, having a mind shift, and he's talked about having a community as parents and guardians. And he has also said we need to be very intentional and involved. Now, I'd like to quickly, we have about 30 minutes to go, but I'd like to quickly go to Cecilia. All the details we are talking about, we have either read in the media, we have seen somebody forward something, we have listened to TV. So we have got it through the media. That means we have not got it firsthand, but we have people like Cecilia who has gone deeper and spoken to some of these people and picked their experience. And some of these things they may not even write about, considering how delicate these things are. That brings me to want to know, Cecilia, writing these stories and carrying out these investigations, what comes to your mind about the future of Uganda?
Thank you so much, moderator. Well, there's no better way to introduce or discuss this topic than to share my personal experience. I believe that we all went to boarding school, or some of us did. But do you remember phrases like winter, where children had to actually wake up late in the night to bang winter? Winter is something that people used to do to keep awake. And so we would have like a basin of cold water, put in our feet, and then read so that you could be able to chase sleep. But I don't even recall any one moment where whatever I read during winter actually sank in. I think I was just going with the trends, because you'd be deemed to be a lazy child if you weren't seen to be reading in the wee hours of the morning or in the night. So after winter, then comes the sudden waking up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. I mean, you have just gone to bed probably at about midnight or 1, and here are the matrons banging on your doors and windows to wake up at 3 a.m. So you barely have slept. So there's also that element. But then the other thing that Dr. Kalani hinted on was the pressure to really excel. I remember I wasn't a really good mathematics student. And so we had a teacher in secondary school. For every number that you failed, that would be a cane. So just imagine if you're a weak student, you have not done mathematics well, and you maybe scored 20%. How many canes are those? About 80, because then he would choose to cane you according to what you have performed. So all these really come to play. And so when I started doing stories, I have been doing a lot of stories on health and education and children. And so I was really compelled to start the mental health stories from the angle. I know many of you got to read the story of 14 million Ugandans mentally ill. That is the story that I believe started the conversation on mental health, because it trended even in Kenya, and people were just making memes of how, kwani Ugandans are this mad, not knowing that there were underlying issues that were really pushing up the numbers. Dr. Kalani may not have mentioned the statistics of the 14 million Ugandans, but if you break down the issues like he did, the anxiety and depression, the alcohol abuse, the teenage pregnancy, during the lockdown alone, from the 2021 police statistics, about 14,000 teenagers were impregnated. So that is how we get to really quantify the numbers of people that really need our help. So what comes to my mind after all this? I think all is not gloom and doom. There's always a starting point. And like all the other panelists have said, we are the very people that should make these changes. For instance, I don't see why children should be woken up in the wee hours of the morning to really go to school. Can't we have policies where children are maybe made to study next to their homes, so you don't have to crisscross over town? We know parents who are like, no, I live in Seta, but my child has to go to Green Hill. You know, Green Hill is in Chiboli. So what does that mean? You have to wake up at 4 a.m. to start preparing that little child to go through the traffic and then get to Green Hill. And then before you know it, you're definitely going to pick them up at, say, 7 or 8, because you have to finish up with work. And how much time will the child have rested? Barely, nothing. So we really need to think about these little things. Yeah, these little things that we think are so little, but they really matter. We have to like ensure that we get to a point where we have to be realistic. When I spoke to some of these experts, for instance, on alcohol abuse, I did an interview with someone, with one of the psychologists, who told me that kids are now taking drugs like cat and kuba. I don't even know how these look like, but our children, teenagers, are taking them. And why are they doing that? To keep awake, because they have to go through the night and study. And so they're forced to take these drugs to be able to keep awake. There's something else, cocaine and heroin. These are expensive drugs, but guess what? These kids are now using what they call synthetic opioids. So these are cheap versions of cocaine that cost as little as 5,000 shillings. So if you give your child pocket money, be sure that they are going to get that kind of drug at the cost of 5,000 shillings, just to simply keep awake. And the pressure also from these schools. The psychologist told me that there are kids who came and said, you know what, if I'm not among the top 10, my parent is going to deem me a failure. Why are we measuring our children on our number 1 to 10 basis? Is it really honest, or is it really something that you can pride on, to say that when a child does not make it to maybe between number 1 and 10, they're considered a failure? It's something that really requires a mindset change, because parents on the other side, like the parents I talk to say, I mean that the teachers I talk to say, our parents, the parents of these children, even give us extra money to pump, to pump these children to be able to, excel. But you cannot bend an old tree. There are some children who will not grasp those concepts, and it doesn't mean that they are weak or poor students. Like the pastor said, there are certain strengths that children bear. You could be strong at sports, so why not nurture that talent instead of, pumping them into doing things that they certainly cannot do? So it's a two-way traffic. Whereas the parents are pumping the teachers also are literally, they have no option, because they also want to, should I say, maintain the rankings of their school, to be able to probably end up in the newspaper as the best schools that have excelled. So these issues are really intertwined. We all need to go back to the drawing board if we are to tackle this matter seriously. Remember, Uganda is a young population. About 80% of our population are children. And so we have to all go back to the drawing board to start making sense of the things that we do deliberately, to sort of undo them, so that we can save our future. And then the other issue I also wanted to bring to your attention, I did a story that indicated that Uganda lost about 770 billion of no productivity. This was during the COVID-19 pandemic. And how we came to these figures, about so many people were sick, were either grappling with sick people, some had maybe lost employment, some had maybe lost loved ones, some were just battling the disease, and therefore that time that they would have spent productively at work, they instead had to do what? Had to take care of their personal health and all that. So that's how much money we lost. But then also, government alone lost about 137 billion on treating just people with mental health related issues, depression and anxiety. There's a rehabilitation center called Hope and Beyond that I talked to, and they say they usually admit 20 patients. But around the COVID period, they had to stretch to about 35 patients, and some others were still on call. And they said majority of the people who were checking in for these services were under 18. Can you imagine? Under 18. These are children who had issues to do with anxiety, depression, fear. You just look at a child and they're like, oh my God, I can't deal with what's currently happening. So they had to stretch, and because some of these rehabilitation centers cannot take children that young, some then had to be referred to pediatricians, pediatric facilities where they could be able to take care of them. But that really speaks volumes that our children are not well. They're grappling with issues that we seemingly think are okay, but we need to go back to the drawing board as parents, to just look at how we parent these children and to just listen to them. Yeah, I think I'll stop there for now.
Wow, thank you so much, Cecilia. As I had feared, Cecilia is talking about a number of things that she may have experienced that we have not experienced. And like I say, like we fear, sometimes these reports are filtered because it's a lot going on in the back end. Dr. Okware, I would like to come back to you. We have about 20 minutes to go, and I'd like to encourage, there are a number of Q&As that are coming through that we may unfortunately not answer today. So we are focusing on the ones that we received before. But like I said, this is a 3-session webinar. We will be here again tomorrow, same time. We will be here again on Friday. If we do not have an opportunity to answer your question, please bear with us. We'd like to encourage you to come back tomorrow. We'll pick them up and see how we can incorporate them. Dr. Okware, you noticed that Cecilia threw a lot of things at you when she talked about policies, she talked about education. I would like to ask you, what is the government response? What are you doing for these, your children?
Thank you so much. And I like the direction of the discussion. First of all, before I talk about what government is doing or what attempts are being put across to address the mental health challenges that we are seeing that's glaring at us. I want to again reiterate what all the other speakers have said, that in order to address mental health challenges, one, there is no one size fits all, but we need an all of community, all of society, all of people approach. That it is a problem that is bigger than you and I, it's bigger than the government, but we are all part of this. It is a problem that affects all of us and in very many ways. And so in our various capacities, in our various spheres of influence, I know your parents here, but you also have influences elsewhere. Ensure that mental health is included in the programming. For example, if we talk about mental health of the young people, we need to ensure that we come together as a country and as parents and take back our roles as parents to guide the young generation. We have values that we do have because our parents gave us these values. And if we are not present for our young people, they will find alternatives, as the pastor said. And sometimes there's no one else who has a best interest of your child than you, the parent yourself. So let's take back our roles as parent and find ways to balance, these things. I see a lot of patients, but as the previous speakers say, that most of the problems with alcohol and substances are young people trying to medicate themselves with these alcohol and substances as a way of managing. But also you find that we are generally irresponsible, even as adults or even as society, because you would wonder why a shopkeeper, for example, would sell alcohol, would sell these substances to someone who is young, to a young person, and yet they know the consequences of all these things. So it is just, and I urge us that in all our spheres of influence, before we think about what government can do, let's think about what we can do in all our spheres of influence. Let's guide these young people, because they are the generation that is going to take care of us when we cannot take care of ourselves. And we don't want to be in the hands of people who don't have values. We don't want to be in the hands of people who are mentally ill and unproductive at the end of the day. That said, government has tried to put across a couple of interventions, and I'll just start with schools. I think you've noted that there is a change in curriculum, and that was really geared towards reducing the competition and relieving children of the pressure, but also to have more targeted learning and not, putting the responsibility towards the young people, so that they have responsibility and not read because someone is pushing them to read and excel. And that's why I think ideally we are not, the new curriculum doesn't have reports, I think, and positions, basically to reduce the pressure of the children, but to have more child or student-centered learning than the teacher-driven learning. So that in a way will relieve the pressure. But again, as I said, I always tell parents that do not expect maybe a child has a brain that is a mixture of two parents. So for example, if you are not a doctor, if you are not an engineer, why would you expect your child to be there? Let's learn to have realistic expectations from the children. This is what we want to tell the teachers, to individualize the learning as well. That is a response, but it's a step in the right direction, that we hope that the new curriculum will be picked up and it will be implemented well. But the ultimate the intention is to reduce the pressure. We are also happy with Ministry of Education. In the past, mental health has not been seen as an issue, but recently we were drafting the school health guideline, and we have a very big section on mental health. And I think upon the launch of the guidelines, what will be done is to ensure that we train teachers and basically raise their, to increase their mental health literacy, to know that there are certain things they do that affect the mental health of these learners, but also learn how to support them even in the schools. So, I mean, having a strategy, having a guideline is one thing, but implementing it is another. I just hope that we can have it implemented and we can train the teachers in that regard as well. I think even the school health strategy and policy has very good provisions. One of which is advocating for us to have counselors in schools, like that we have a safe space for learners and people to talk, because we realize that these young people spend most of their times in school than even in the home. So having a professional to guide them and support them, I think it's something that the First Lady also pointed out, and we following through to ensure that amongst the many issues and needs we have as a country, we can at least secure a professional in schools to take care of these young people, but also map out schools and take the responsibility of schools, so that we don't have schools selling alcohol and other substances within the school premises, because availability and presence is one of the risk factors for these young people to be exposed to some of these things. As a ministry, we have the child and adolescent mental health policy guidelines that basically spells out the care, the mental health care of children and adolescents. And at that, there are specialties. For example, in Tabika Hospital, there's a special unit for child and adolescent mental health treatment. And I think we have 13 regional referral hospitals that have psychiatrists, but basically we want to implore you to seek help in these places in case someone has a mental illness, and they are all purposed there to take care of people, including young people. But as a specialist level, it's only Tabika Hospital that has the child and adolescent specialist mental health clinic. We also there's a training that was commissioned particularly to focus on child and adolescent mental health, I think in Tabika, in Bara University. So we're having more and more child and adolescent mental health experts. We putting them out there to be utilized and to practice and support the mental health of young people. The ministry also works with a lot of NGOs, and there are very many NGOs picking up the interest, particularly at schools and communities, but basically to support the mental health of young people. We recently passed the Mental Health Act that again promotes mental well-being and promotes the dignity and respect of persons with mental ill health, but again introduces the aspect of community mental health. Always we have a tendency of looking at mental health or mental illnesses as being synonymous with Tabika Hospital, but these things are in the communities. It affects people like you and I, and your children, your relatives, and so on and so forth. And so we want to we want to train the primary healthcare workers at all levels of care. I think it's something that is already being done using a certain model, because what we realize is that much as you notice that mental health is stigmatized in the general population, even amongst healthcare workers, there is some degree of stigma. I always share this story that when I was planning to go and study psychiatry, which is a master's degree after my medicine, I went there without telling anyone that this is what I wanted to study, because even my own parents discouraged me and like, what are you going to do and work with people who are mentally ill? So there is stigma even in the health fraternity, but yet mental illnesses and things like anxiety and depression come with different signs and symptoms, one of which is headache, unexplained headache. People can feel fatigued all the time. You can feel backache. You can feel like your heart is racing and so on. And these patients end up in the hands of primary healthcare workers. And sometimes these primary healthcare workers do not know that that is mental illness, and they are quick to give medicines for heart. Say you're having a heart attack, they are quick to maybe treat malaria, and you're just feeling depressed and you're feeling fatigued all the time. They're quick to treat physical illnesses wrongly. So what we're doing as a government is we have a manual and training. We train the primary healthcare workers because we cannot have enough specialists to handle all the mental health issues in the country. So training primary healthcare workers say that at any point of care, if I went to a health center, I went to where, and I have a mental health issue, at least the least they can do is identify and refer, such that we make the right diagnosis. But if they can go on and provide basic care and treatment, that is also something that is good. I think you've seen we have more airtime as well now. People are talking about mental health, and raising awareness. That is also something, because many times people suffer from things, but they do not know that these are actually mental health issues that we deal with. So it is again something that we can do and we can continue to do. And at this point, I want to thank Minet for pointing this out, because raising awareness is one step to knowing where people can get services, to even knowing that what I'm experiencing is a mental health issue, and knowing the things they can do to prevent these problems that they are facing. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Okware. I think we just need to keep talking about, I can see there's a lot that the government is doing. There's a lot of content. You've talked about the mental health guidelines. You've talked about the Mental Health Act. These are some of the things that a number of us as parents may not know that are there for our consumption. So we need to be intentional, like Pastor Sam had said. I want to keep talking about being intentional. Look out for content. Look out for communities, for support. We have only 8 minutes to go, but I want to tap into some of Vivian's experience. Vivian has dealt with a number of these children, adolescents, and their guardians when they come in for counseling, and she has firsthand experience. From the different submissions, we know that sometimes the cases can be extreme. They are extreme cases. So Vivian, very quickly, I'd like to pose 2 questions to you, because it's important that we tap into that. What is the hope? Number one, what is the hope for extreme cases? And as parents and guardians, what can we do? And also, Vivian, I'd like you to talk into some of the different parenting styles and how they affect mental health of our children. And then after Vivian has spoken to us, I will give a minute to each one of our panelists to give parting shots. But remember, we are here again tomorrow, same time tomorrow and on Friday, and we'll be talking to the children themselves. So Vivian, tell us about the Hope for Extreme Cases, and also talk about the parenting styles and how they can affect mental health of our children. Okay, sorry, Vivian seems to be off. Vivian, okay, she's on, yeah.
Sorry about that. It was a connectivity glitch, but yes, hope for extreme cases. I want to pick from what Dr. Kalani mentioned. There is hope, just like there is hope for extreme physical illness in relation to cancer, HIV, and what have you. There is also hope for extreme cases. However, that is only possible if we use a systems approach, right from the child to Uganda as a country. Whatever I do with a child in therapy will not hold if the child goes back to a dysfunctional family or home. Whatever I do with a child in therapy will not hold if they are stigmatized in the community in which they live. So systems approach, and we shall get there. Yes, Doreen, I wanted to keep it that short. Did I miss out on anything else that you asked me to?
Parenting styles.
Oh, thank you. Parenting styles. Parenting is critical, very critical. And usually I hear people say, you parent according to the way you were parented. Anyway, as far as I know, there's 4 approaches or 4 types of parenting. Number 1, the permissive parenting type, where the child takes lead. It's child-led, laissez-faire, there are no rules, you do as you please. We have homes like that. We also have neglectful and uninvolved parenting style, the neglectful and uninvolved parenting style, where one is not engaged, one is present, but perhaps also absent. And then we have the authoritarian. It's all about me, the parent. You're going to say you will do as I tell you, not as I do. I could come home late in the night, drunk and what have you. However, because you're my child, you have to do what I say, not what I do. And then lastly, we have the authoritative, collaborative parenting style, where there are clear rules and expectations. The child knows what to expect, but also the parent knows what is expected of them, because parenting is also about knowing that you are a model. Children learn through imitation. So no matter what you tell me, I will see what you do, and that's exactly what I do, to the extent that there is research that suggests that children also imitate how you cope with TV, through the phone, a dog. Then you're teaching your children that this is how you cope with difficulties. It is yes, I'll yell because that's how mom and dad deal with it. So Doreen, I'll leave it at that because we run out of time. Thank you.
Yes, I noticed that we've run out of time, but I will allow people to give their parting shots. But before that, again, for those who have submitted in the Q&A, we will pick up all those questions tomorrow. But I'd just like to read one that came from Atadan Joel. He's speaking to all of us. He says, I think we should be careful about saying teenagers are this or that. We have more than 10 million teenagers. We should maybe say there's a growing number of teenagers doing this or that, because we must acknowledge that there are also many good teenagers out there. Thank you so much, Joel. We have taken note. We will not generalize. We know that there are a number of good teenagers out there, and we have noted that. Please encourage your child to log in tomorrow. Please log in with your child, the teenagers, because we'll be speaking to them, especially tomorrow. But with the 3 minutes we're waiting, we still have, I will ask in this order, Cecilia, and then Pastor Sam, and then Dr. Okware to give their parting shots in extreme 1 minute. Cecilia, over to you. Your parting shots, please.
Thank you, moderator. Well, all has been said. Maybe what I can add is that, remember, with mental health these days, you no longer expect a mad person on the street. Any person is a candidate for mental health. CEO, be it a judge, be it a journalist, be it a health professional, we are all candidates. So what that means is that we have to learn and unlearn the way we treat this topic. And COVID-19 really changed the narrative. So let's speak lessons of how to adopt. And maybe the other final thing is so many people are seeking solace in churches. So it's important for you people in the profession to engage religious and cultural leaders in trying to helping people with mental health instances, because most of the classic cases you see for people seeking help in churches are indicators of mental health. That is what experts said. So it's important for us to engage these groups who are not really professionals or experts to be able to tackle the disease or the condition in a broad spectrum. Otherwise, I thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. Pastor Sam, over to you. You're muted. Please unmute.
I was saying, Doreen, thank you so much. You've moderated so well. Thank you so much for that. For me, it's just to say that mental health is real and it's here with us. And just like the last speaker said, it could be just even in your house, and all of us need potential to that because of the lifestyle we have today. So for parents, I'd like to say that let's have a culture shift. Parents, date your children, have time with them, make time to have your teenager, date them, have time with them. Do not compromise with the marketplace rat race. Consider your children, consider your teenager, because yes, there are good teenagers out there, like they've said. And for the teachers, I'd like to say, let us personalize every teenager and our child, understand the mental health. Let us have awareness about mental health. Consider the ratio, the student and teacher. I know sometimes it's overwhelming, but try to consider it. Also consider your calling. It's very important. You could be teaching a president, and don't judge them. Professionalism and responsibility are very key for each of us. And yes, I'd like to say thank you so much. It's been a great time. I know even tomorrow we shall have a better conversation. But I'd just like to say this, if you could allow me, Doreen, just to leave this scripture that is in Deuteronomy 6:6-7. It says, and these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shall talk to them and as you sit, as in your house, and when you walk away, and when you lie down, and when you rest. This was Moses telling the children of Israel that indeed we need to teach our children. And I know that if we teach our children our values, they'll carry on to another generation. So let us keep it up. Just don't give up as a parent. It's hard to raise children, teenagers especially, but God is with you. Do know that you're not doing it by yourself or in your own strength, but teach them the values. And I know we shall be there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pastor Sam. We definitely needed the scripture. So I'll go over to Dr. Okware for his parting shots, and then Vivian will close with her parting shots. Dr. Okware.
Thank you so much. I think what I want to say is, as my parting shot, is that parenting is not a walk in the park. It's not easy, and it's understandable to struggle, because we are dealing with a lot of changes that ultimately make parents to struggle. Everyone else is. So one thing that we should take from here is that let's support each other. Let's be prepared to learn and unlearn. There are very many things to learn from our children and even from each other. I also want to urge us as parents to stay mentally healthy, get some tips, and ensure that we stay mentally healthy and protect our own mental health. Because a mentally healthy parent is a better parent. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kenneth. Noted, a mentally well parent is required for a mentally well child. Dr. Vivian, over to you.
Thank you, Doreen. For me, it's many parents ask, Vivian, how come my child didn't tell me this? And often what rings in my mind is, are you the parent that is ready and willing to listen without judging this child? And for me, that's it. For all the parents that are on here, are you that parent? Thank you.
Wow, wow, wow. What a lovely conversation. Very many insights. It was a very insightful discussion. And like I have said, I know there are a number of people who are joining in who already have wellness programs or employee assistance programs as brought to you by Minet. So you are able to access some of these panelists for support. But if you've joined as an individual, or it's the first time to hear about Minet and you'd like to be supported, please send us an email, hope@minet.co.ug, hope@minet.co.ug. Or if it's really urgent and you can't write an email, I'd like to read you the number for our wellness coordinator, Helen, who was also joining in. It's 0703-750-519, 0703-750-519. Please reach out to us either through the email hope@minet.co.ug, all in small letters. Yes, it's in the chat. Somebody has typed it in the chat, or call or send a message to 0703-750-519. I'd like to thank all our panelists today. You know, when you have a specialist on call, 1.5 hours seems like 5 minutes, because all these people are pouring into us either from their knowledge from school, or from their experience, or from their different specialties for the matters they've handled, the different people they have seen. But like Dr. Okware has said, we all need to take care of our mental health if we are to take care of our children's mental health. We'll be here tomorrow and Friday, same time. Please log in, we will share the flyers. See you then. Thank you so much and have a lovely afternoon.